everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. So it's Ring Week, which I'm incredibly excited about. I love these movies. I absolutely adore them. So we're going to start off with talking about the Japanese Ring film, which came out in '98. And then later in the week, Chris is going to talk about the novel that created the Ring film in Japan. And then I'm going to talk about later in the week, I'm going to talk about the American version of The Ring, which is based on the Japanese film of The Ring. All right, so let's get started with this Japanese film. So, for the crew, the director is Hideo Nakata, and he did The Ring, and then he did The Ring 2 in Japan, both of those. He also did Darkwater, and he did The Ring 2 in America. He didn't do the first American Ring, but he did the second one. And then he also did an American film called Chat Room. I haven't seen that movie. I'm interested in looking into it. He also did a film called Don't Look Up, and that was in '96. And that's the film that got him the ring. People watched Don't Look Up. They felt it was kind of scary. They thought this guy would be good to do The Ring, so they grabbed him. The writer, the screenwriter, is Hiroshi Takahashi. Sorry about the way I'm saying these names. I'm doing my best for Japanese names. The reason I mention these two is because this film revolutionized the horror genre all around the world. Now, specifically, what does that mean? This film brought ghost movies back into style. That's the way that I would put it. For me personally, I don't feel like there's a lot of difference between this movie and something like The Changeling or maybe Ghost Story. This film brought that kind of horror back because throughout the 80s and the 90s, a lot of horror was slasher films or monster movies. They became very popular, which is great. The more different kinds of horror we have, the better. The more popular horror is, the better, in my opinion. I love the genre. I'm not as big of a fan of slasher films as I am of ghost movies, but it's all important. I'm glad it's all here, right? I'll watch The Thing any day of the week. I love it. Or Alien, But ghost movies, I love ghost movies because it's a different kind of horror. And I believe that The Ring brought that back, which is excellent. A couple of the actors in it, the lead actor is Nanako Matsushima, and her husband is Hiroyuki Sanada. Hiroyuki is very famous. You've probably seen him before. If you haven't seen The Ring, you've probably seen him before. He does all kinds of stuff. He's in Shogun right now. I believe he plays the Emperor of Japan. I'm not watching Shogun. I watched it when it first came out on television back in the 80s. This is a remake of that original miniseries. The new Shogun is. It scarred me. You know what I mean? Kids watching adult stuff on TV. It has some crazy moments. There's a point where a guy gets boiled. They literally get a pot boiling and they dunk him in it in a huge net, which is terrifying. There's a part where they use these explosives to blow down this door, and there's a person behind it, and the door crushes them. And it was a big deal in the 80s. It really was. James Clavell, I think, wrote it. And there's no reason I should know that except Shogun, right? The miniseries. So the miniseries is back, and he's starring in that. I think he's the Emperor of Japan in that, which is cool. But he's also in Bullet Train. He's in the Lost TV show. He's in Rush Hour, a couple Rush Hours. He's in a couple John Wick films. I'm sure you've seen this guy before. He's excellent. Everyone in the cast is excellent. It's a really well-made film. I really enjoyed it. Toho produced it. All right, so that's our crew stuff out of the way. So, bringing back ghost movies. Why is this important at all? Who cares? Um, it's important because it's a different kind of scare than watching Silence of the Lambs or even Freddy Krueger or something like that. It's it's more creepy and less visceral, I guess is a way to describe it, but I'm not positive if that even works. It's just different. The best way that I can describe it, and this is insane. This is kind of a segue that I'm going to take. um, this is really insane. We've always liked horror movies. So we had just moved into a new place, and we had some friends over. We were young, and somebody said, "You know what we should do? We should play tag." Right? They literally wanted to play tag in the house. And I was like, okay, wait. We're not doing that because we're the ones that just moved in here, right? I don't want to trash our house, even though it sounds fun. Um, no, what we're going to do is we're going to play the scare game. And I just made it up at the moment, right? And I'm sure everyone's done this 1,000 times. But for us, it was kind of the first time we really experienced this. Uh, what I'm trying to say is I didn't like invent this or anything, right? I'm sure everybody does this. But what I said was, here's what we're going to do. All of us are going to go in a room together and shut the door. One person is going to stay out here, turn off all the lights, hide somewhere. We'll give them about a minute. We'll come out looking for him. And when we get close to him, they'll jump out and scare us. That's what we're going to do. And it sounds so dumb, right? It's so basic and so silly and childish. But we did it, and it was incredible. It's the weirdest, funniest, coolest thing. I mean, you have to try it to understand what I'm saying, but honestly, it's incredible to be scared knowing that something's about to jump out, right? And there's no danger at all, right? But you're so scared. You're in this little clump with like four other people trying to move down the hallway, right? And then as you get close to the end, of course, they go blah, and everybody goes ah, and then it's over. Then the lights turn on, and it's such a rush, and it's such a weird, amazing feeling. I believe that that's what ghost movies do for the horror genre. Is that kind of a scare. It's not a serious scare. It's a fun scare. It's a silly scare. Now, I do want to throw out, just real quick, there's 3 rules that we created for the scare game, and I feel like that these are very important, honestly, for talking about watching these kind of movies. Rule number 1 is you have to be willing to be scared. If you're too cool to get scared, you will hate this movie because it's not that scary, right? If you're too cool to be scared, you shouldn't play the scare game. It's so easy to just be like, not here, not here. Oh boy, that was so scary. Wow, you really got me. But you can't. You have to be in the mood, or you have to allow yourself to be jumpy, right? I mean, tiny things. There's an amazing scene in this film where he's writing. He's outside sitting on a park bench and he's looking down and he's writing. And suddenly you see a pair of a person walk up to him, but you can only see it from his point of view. So all you see are the feet and the legs, right? And the feet just walk right up to him and stop. And he freezes in terror and he can't look up. He's trying to look up. And then finally he works up the courage, but when he does, nobody's there, of course, right? And that's not that scary unless you're allowing it to be, right? You have to be able to say, this is going to be so creepy, it's going to be so fun, I can't wait to see it, right? You've got to allow it to work. So that's the first rule of the scare game. You got to allow it to work. The second rule is don't get violent, right? If you're the type of person who, when somebody jumps out, you punch it, you can't play the scare game. I'm sorry, right? People are going to be jumping out. You can't punch them. No punching in the scare game, right? That's the second rule. And the third rule, and this is a weird one, but it's very, very important. The third rule is you cannot scare anyone after the game. Hugely important. When you're not playing the scare game, you are not scaring people. Because there's going to be somebody in your group, the first impulse they're going to get when the scare game's over is, I know what I'm going to do. After everybody leaves, I'm going to sneak back in their house and I'm going to scare the crap out of them. And of course, the reality is they're going to get shot, right? Do not do that kind of stuff. Do not scare people outside of the scare game because it's not fun then. Then all of a sudden it has teeth, right? It's a different kind of scare. That's not the scare game. So keep it in the scare game for these kind of scares. Okay. Oh, one last quick tiny story about the scare game. Then I promise I won't say anything else about it. We were babysitting once, right? We had like this girl must have been like 5, right? My wife, she's worked in daycare for many years, and she would sometimes do babysitting jobs. So we'd have a child around. So we decide we're going to play the scare game with this kid. And of course, we're going easy. They go in the bedroom. They wait about 30 seconds. Outside the bedroom, there's this little hallway, and I just got at the end of the hallway with the lights off. And they came walking down, and they were like, oh my gosh, it's so scary. I can't believe it. And I went, blah! And there was this weird pause, which I swear was like 15 seconds, like super long. And then this blood-curdling scream. Like I was like, oh my God, we killed this kid. We killed a kid. She screams, and that goes on for, I swear, like 15 seconds. And then a little tiny pause, and then she says, can we do it again? And that's exactly how it feels. It's so weird because it's so energizing and crazy. Okay, enough about the scare game. Back to the movie. But that, I believe, is what The Ring brought back to horror. Okay? That's why The Ring is so important. Because you get to watch movies like that in addition to the other movies that you like to watch that are scary. Finally, let's talk about the plot of the film a bit. It's a great movie. I really enjoy it. When we first saw it, Chris was saying it must have been about 2002. Chris didn't get to see it with us because he was in Japan, which is funny. We were in America. It was about 2002. And one of our Japanese friends named Yumi had a copy. I think she had a copy. Or we might have illegally downloaded a copy. I'm not sure. We couldn't get it, of course. But we got a copy somehow. And Yumi came over. It didn't have subtitles. And she kind of translated the movie for us while we were watching, which was really nice of her. Because talk about a pain, right? Can you imagine watching a 2-hour movie and just telling people exactly what's happening the entire time, right? That's crazy. But we had so much fun watching it, and it was so scary. I think being with the right group of people also really helps when you're watching any kind of a movie, to be honest, right? If you're in the mood and you're with the right people, you're going to have a wonderful time. The reason I keep kind of bringing that kind of stuff up is because if you just rush out and rent this movie right now, it is not going to be that scary. Ghost movies have come a long way since the time this film was made. Certainly since the 70s, So it's very, very tame, but it's really wonderful. I mean, if you have any kind of a horror collection, it's a must. And Arrow Video released it. They did a nice 4K box set. You can buy just the film, The Ring, or you could get the 3-disc box set. I, of course, recommend you get the 3-disc box set. There's 3 other movies on it. They're not as good as The Ring, but there's 3 other movies, and there's a bunch of extra stuff. It's totally worth it to get the box set, I would say, and it's very affordable. You know. Anyways, back to the plot. So it opens. It's nice. They've got some credits rolling, and then they just open up on the ocean. They just show the waves, right? More credits are rolling. You're just going over the ocean. This film this is weird, but this film is rooted in cosmic horror. This film feels like a Lovecraft thing. The mother of Sadako apparently sleeps with a creature from the sea and has Sadako. And the world can't handle Sadako, so she gets brutally killed, and her vengeance seeps out into this videotape. And anyone who watches it is going to die a week after seeing the video. It's an incredible concept. And it really comes from cosmic horror, the idea that we don't know what's out there and that vengeance and pain can just seep in if you're not careful. You know, you can get cursed without even realizing that it's happening. Really creepy, cool, weird stuff. And that's why it opens up on the ocean, just watching this vast gray sea. We get to the opening scene. Now, the opening scene in Japan is really good. The opening scene in the American version, I'm going to do a comparison all the way through, but I do want to mention this right off the bat because I do think the American film catches a lot of flack for that opening scene, and I believe the problem is the women that they cast are too old. I think that's honestly the real issue. There might be a dialogue problem, but I'll get into more of that when we get to the other one. But I really think that's the key. Because when Americans watch the Japanese version, we're more willing to suspend our disbelief. We are more willing to say, oh, those poor kids. You know, because they seem more like kids. And I think they're written more like kids. You know, they're very innocent kids talking about this scary thing. And it's a really neat setup because what you've got is a child who heard a rumor, who's explaining that rumor about this crazy videotape to this other kid. And the other kid has watched the tape. They've literally seen it. And it's their 7th day. It's the day they're going to die. So it's so neat to see this person become terrified about hearing literally their story back at them. And then the other person realizes that something is really wrong. And they make sure that both characters know that this person has watched the video. They're both fully aware that something bad is probably about to happen. Right? They try to blow it off. The phone rings. They get really scared. They answer the phone, but it's just their mom, so it's okay. Right? So they talk, and then she runs off to the bathroom. But, and unfortunately, we don't see this part. The ghost shows up, scares one of them to death. The other one witnesses the whole thing and is now in an insane asylum because she can't stand to be near TVs in any way. Right? It's an incredible setup, and it works so well in the Japanese version. It just doesn't work really well in the American version. But it's really smart. It's a very intelligent scene. I really enjoy it. So, this is a weird thing. They decided to switch the lead from a male to a female. I appreciate that kind of stuff here in America. I enjoy when I get to see different kinds of people do different kinds of things. In this film, though, I kind of realized they made the lead a female because they wanted the character to be in distress all the time. Like, she is really a damsel in distress. She is losing it. She can't focus. She's paranoid and she doesn't know what to do. There's a point where he literally grabs her and slaps her and reminds her that she has a child so that she'll snap out of it and get busy. You know, like I'm glad they flipped it because it means it's flipped in the American version, and the American version is not that way, which is very cool. But the Japanese version is a little more traditional, which is not the greatest thing in the world, but it's okay. You know, I see where they're coming from. It's just not the choice that I would have made. The music's excellent through the whole thing. It's very. It's hard to describe it as music. First off, right? There is music in there, of course, but it's very otherworldly, right? Scary and weird, and it comes in right when you want it to. You know, when it's like, oh, a scare's coming. You know, so that's really great. All through it, they're flashing up the day of the week so that you can see how many days have gone by. And that really, really does a brilliant job of setting up the twist ending of this film, which is so good. And that's another reason I think this film was kind of successful and influential. The twist is so unexpected and incredible because it's a traditional ghost story, straight up. Like it literally has the microfiche scene. Now, I'm gonna explain what that is. I make fun of that because I really like that. In ghost movies, somebody buys a new house, they move in, weird stuff starts happening. They don't understand. Then they realize it's haunted and they have to get down to the reason why. So what do? They go to the library, they go in the basement, and they look at the microfiche. They have to scan through all the images of the old newspapers. Nowadays, it's just an internet scene, right? They go on the internet. What happened here? This person was murdered 27 years ago, right? Or whatever. In this film, they have newspapers, literal paper newspapers, because she works for a newspaper. I swear half the scenes in this film are her holding a newspaper looking for things, right? Which is super fun. I know that I'm watching an enjoyable ghost movie when that scene happens. I feel like it's so important for the genre. You know, you got to look up and find out what's going on. Another thing that happens in every ghost movie is they have to free the ghost. They have to release the curse, right? They got to find the body and bury it properly. Or they've got to find the proof that they were murdered and get it to the police, you know, or whatever. They got to have a seance and lead them towards the light, whatever it takes to release the curse. This film has all of that. They find the body, they call the police, they get it buried. It's done. But the movie keeps going, which is brilliant, and you get another day, which is just crazy. They flash up another one and you're like, what is going on? And then, of course, the most successful scene of the film, her coming out of the television and killing him, the husband, just shocking and insane. And you're like, why? We did it. They did everything. I mean, literally, if you watch the film, they're with the police, they found the body, and then he goes and drops her off at home. You feel like there's a chance that they might get back together, but he's got some work to do, so he's got to go. He takes off, they go in, she goes inside, she sits down on the bed and relaxes, and it could go to black. It's built to go to black right then. But then they cut to him working, and they show the date. It's so good. It's so shocking. And of course, the twist is you can't get rid of the curse except by making a copy of the video and showing it to somebody else. Right? That's the true key. And to put that after the traditional storyline is so incredible. You know, I believe that it is a direct influence on The Sixth Sense. I honestly believe that it is. It didn't, of course, hand M. Night Shyamalan the plot. His plot is very unique. It's his, you know. And the others was being made at the same time. I believe the others was influenced by this as well. You know, I don't know if the directors or writers could have heard about it or if they saw it, you know, but I believe it influenced them in some way through part of the crew or somehow it was helping these other filmmakers to make twist movies. The tape in this is pretty well done. I enjoy it. The music, especially. The music's great. All of the sound. One key feature to the Japanese film versus the American film, which of course I'll bring up later in the true comparison, but the clue in the film is actually in the audio in the Japanese movie, which I thought was super cool because the audio is really good. It's really scary. The imagery is it's strange, you know. I don't know how truly scary it is for an American audience. I can't speak for a Japanese audience. I believe that this film is 5 times scarier for a Japanese audience than it is for an American audience. Which is very weird, right? That different cultures have different things that scare them. For instance, they stay in the cabin B4, the letter B and then the number 4. That's the cabin that they're in when they see the tape. And 4 is a bad number in Japan, like 13 is a bad number in America. 4 is a bad number because I think the Chinese symbol that they use to represent 4 either looks very similar to or is the same symbol as the symbol for death. So it's like 4 equals death, you know? So there's different cultural things that are going to pop up. I believe being part of a Japanese audience watching this film would be crazy fun compared to being part of an American audience watching the Japanese version of this film. So she finds the tape, she watches it. It's kind of creepy, right? She gets kind of zoned out while she's watching it, then she snaps out of it. And when she looks at the television after she turns it off, she can see Sadako behind her in the reflection of the TV. And that's kind of our first big scare, right? Everything's really creepy, but that really kind of sticks out. That's a nice one. That's very nice. She whips around, there's nothing there. Then, of course, the phone rings. She picks it up, and she hears that scratching sound. Very creepy. The sound in this is great. I can't say that enough. She's the one that literally says, I only have 1 week, right? The phone doesn't say it to her, which is cool. That's very interesting. The dad, of course, is excellent. We already talked about the actor. He does an amazing job in this film. I love the scene. So the kid in both the films is very unique. He's incredibly intelligent, and he takes care of himself. In fact, he kind of takes care of his mom, and I think that goes back to the damsel in distress thing, right? His mom is a wreck because she's gone through a divorce, and she has to take care of the kid alone. But she's trying to work this full-time job at the newspaper, and it's terrible, you know. So the kid helps take care of the mom, and they cast a young kid, which is really wise. If these actors get too old, it honestly ruins it, right? If you need a child in a movie, you need to get a 5-year-old. Get a kid, you know, you have to. So this kid's great, really young. There's this amazing scene where the kid is walking with an umbrella. It's raining bad outside, and he's got an umbrella, and he's probably walking to school. And he's walking, and he just stops. And you can't tell why he stops. And then he slowly looks up. And then it cuts way back, and you realize that there's a man standing there with an umbrella looking at him. And you don't know who this person is. It's kind of weird. And then the kid just puts his umbrella back down and walks around the guy and leaves. And the guy's like, rah. So he goes, and he goes up to the kid's house, right? And you, of course, realize, oh, that's his dad. They just don't have a great relationship, right? Right, which is definitely the case if there's a divorce. When he walks into the house It's a really interesting moment. There's a lot in this film which I forgot about, but I really love. There are a lot of questions posed in the beginning of this movie that get answered later in the movie, right? This scene specifically creates a ton of questions. When he first walks into the house, he does this really weird kind of look around, and then he sort of shakes it off and relaxes, and then he turns and the scene goes on. And you're thinking, what the heck was that? I mean, it's bizarre. It's really bizarre. But later on, you find out that he's kind of psychic, and the person who died in the beginning of the movie is in their house. She is talking to the little kid. She's the one that convinces the little kid to watch the tape. She is present in that house, and because he's kind of psychic, he's aware that she is there, but he brushes it off. He doesn't go into it, right? And like the scare game, some of this can sound kind of silly. You've got to be in the mood. You got to be wanting it, and it's super fun if you are. It's really, really fun. Then he watches the video, and the phone doesn't ring. Nobody calls him. Now, later on in the film, she realizes, oh, the phone can only ring in the cabin. It can't ring out in society. Nobody who watches this tape is going to get a phone call with the weird sound, because they're going to be watching it in their homes as it spreads, or in theaters, or God knows where, right? But they're not going up to the cabin, probably. So the fact that the kids went to the right cabin, and the fact that she was in that cabin, is kind of a coincidence, right? But it has to start somewhere. That is the origin of the tape right there. Because, of course, Sadako's dead right underneath that building. So that's where the tape was created. That's where you watch it, and that's where the phone call can go. But as it spreads, apparently it's going to change. You won't receive a phone call, but it will ring in the cabin, which is interesting. So that's how they know where the dead body is. I kind of wish, and they didn't need this, he figures out after he watches the video, we have the general impression that he doesn't care and he thinks she's full of crap, right? It's a typical plot point. And then as time goes by, he becomes more aware that it's real, and we become aware that he knows it's real, which is cool. It just takes a little while for him. I wish that what they would have done is taken his photograph right after he watched it, even though the phone didn't ring. Because her image, of course, is all messed up. When he arrives at the house, she says, "Take my picture," because he doesn't believe her at all. So she says, "Take my picture." He takes it. Her face is all messed up. It's weird. He watches the video. And then the phone doesn't ring, and he's like, "I got to go. I'll look into it. I'll see what I can figure out." And he goes. But I wish she would have said, "Take your picture," right? But it's nice to kind of have that up and down. We need that as an audience, right? We need to be like, "Oh, that dumb guy doesn't even believe her." Well, he'll find out. It makes for a fun viewing experience to have the up and down. A major plot point in this is people being psychic. Sadako's mother is psychic, and the lead's husband is psychic. They can show us flashbacks that the characters are having. Like, he grabs this guy's arm, and suddenly he goes into this flashback. And we can get some of the past that we need, information that we need from the past, through these flashbacks. And it's not the greatest way to tackle that kind of stuff, but it's not bad. It doesn't hurt the movie. I do believe they take a lot of that out for the American version, but in the Japanese film, I think it's really important, and I think it's another one of those cultural things. I believe that it works better for a Japanese audience than it does for an American audience, even though I still think it works. I think it's a cool, weird thing. Like, she gets pulled into the vision. The mother does, the lead in the film. She gets pulled in so she can see everything that's happening too. and then Sadako grabs her arm, and of course, when she comes back to reality, she's got those burn marks on her arm where the kid grabbed her, right? So we know it's true, right? It's cool. It's very cool. Yeah, another part about the damsel in distress thing, she needs to realize that she made a copy of the tape, and that's what's different. Her little boy needs to make a copy of the tape for somebody else so that her little boy can live. So she's trying to figure it out. She can't get it, right? She's crying and she's trying to decide what was it that I did differently. And then when she looks in the television is not on, but in the reflection she can see one of the images from the film, which is a really weird image of a guy standing in the water with a towel over his head. No idea, it's just a weird image, right? So, and he's pointing. So when she looks at that reflection, she sees the pointing man, and the man is pointing at her purse. And there's a towel over his head, but we realize that the man pointing is wearing her husband's clothes. It's her husband. So her husband has come back as a ghost. I don't know why he has a towel over his head. Maybe somebody who knows a lot about Japanese culture or whatever. Maybe it's a thing. I don't know. But he's got a towel over his head. He tells her, you need to make a copy. And in fact, as he's dying, as she's coming out of the television, his phone starts ringing. And I think he gets it there because he's like, oh no. I can't remember exactly what he says, but something weird like, she's got to, and then he tries to grab the phone, but then she's right there, and it's very scary, right? But he doesn't say it out loud, but then he appears as a ghost pointing at her purse, and she pulls out the copy and realizes, oh, I made a copy. So the husband even tells her how to do that. She doesn't figure that out on her own. And I feel like it's kind of too bad. You know what I mean? Because I like the character. She's really great in the film. The kid's great. I mean, the whole family's great, But she could have a little bit of agency. She could do a few things on her own. Good. Okay, so that's kind of a basic rundown. Mostly of the points that I saw, I know that's not... I've skipped a bunch, right? I don't just want to sit here and parrot out the plot. But it's a great, fun movie. If you're in the mood for a silly, scary, fun time, it's a blast. You totally need to check it out if you haven't seen it. I'm sure almost everybody has, Just to say, there was a 1996 version of the book that was made for television in Japan. And that wasn't successful. I think they put a lot of sex into it, probably because it was made for a specific genre of Japanese television that has a lot of sex in it. You know what I mean? They just needed some kind of a plot to put a bunch of sex in. So it wasn't successful at all. I don't think you can ever see it. I don't think we could get a copy of it even if we wanted to. But just so you know, it is out there. Also, a lot of these Japanese directors were working in television before they went on to film. And the movement that The Ring came out of was this kind of high school scary TV show movement. And a lot of these directors worked on these scary TV shows for high school students. One of them being this director, and he went on to do The Ring, and The Ring revolutionized everything. So I believe that you could say that working on those TV shows helped The Ring be what it is. And I agree with that. It didn't just come out of nowhere. It had seeds in these television shows, I believe, which is very cool. I haven't seen any of them. I doubt the quality is as high as The Ring, because it's TV, so they were probably going a lot faster. But it's cool to know that. Also, there's 2 Japanese books. The second one is called Spiral. And by the time they decided to make the 98 version of The Ring, Spiral had already been written and released. So what they did is they hired two different directors and two different writers. One of them wrote The Ring, and one of the directors directed it. The other one wrote Spiral, and the other director directed it. And then when The Ring came out, it was actually a double feature. So you went to the theater to watch The Ring and to watch Spiral. Unfortunately, Spiral was nowhere near as successful as The Ring was. Spiral is in the box set. If you buy the Japanese version from Arrow Video, the 3-disc box set, Spiral's in that, so you can watch it. And it's okay, right? It's not the worst thing, but it's definitely not The Ring, you know. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. That's all the information I have. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more stuff like this, make sure to subscribe. We got all kinds of content, backwards and forwards. And thanks so much for watching.